I'm here today with Nancy Boz, who's a vocalist, author of multiple best-selling books on voice, professional singer, keynote speaker, and thought leader. She taught voice for 24 years, and she's the founder of Studio Boz Media Publishing. Her work is guided by the philosophy that we all have personal stories that, once we are aware of them, can be used to empower our lives. They can make us happier, healthier, more peaceful, and thoughtful. And understanding the power of our personal stories is the key to successful living. So welcome, Nancy. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Carol. It is so great to be here. And thank you so much for what you're doing for our community. It is such a gift to empower women who are singing. I love it.
And thank you. Thank you. So focusing on your books for a moment, two of them focus specifically on females. One of them is Teen Girls Singing Guide, and the other one is Singing Through Change, which is for women in midlife and beyond. So why was it important for you to focus on females specifically?
I'm so glad you asked that. The Teen Girl Singing Guide came first, and it was a book for my younger self. And I think a lot of women in the audience might be able to relate to this, that so you like to sing. So what? Does that mean that you should be the person in the spotlight? Does that mean you should be singing your own songs, other people's songs? Should you be trying out for the school musical? What does it mean as a teen girl who loves to sing? How much of your ego should you wrap up into that? And so that book is a psychology-based book based actually on the Myers-Briggs personalities. Like, so you fit into this personality type. What does that mean for you as a singer? What choices do you have? How do you balance this? And I realized in writing that book that I was helping girls and probably their parents understand the stories that we tell about ourselves around how we sing. Everyone who's listening has been told, don't sing or do sing, right? We've had judgments laid upon us from the outside on whether we should be singing or not. Frankly, who cares? It's your story, it's your voice, and this first book, The Teen Girl Singing Guide, is a way of getting that message across to teenagers. Really hard audience to get that message through. It's your voice, you own it, you do what you want to do with it. But the flip side then, the later book that I wrote with my two co-authors was Singing Through Change, Women's Voices in Midlife, Menopause, and Beyond. And my co-authors were Joanne Bozeman and Kate Fraser-Neely. And in writing this book, we realized we actually had to do research on the topic because there wasn't good research on women's singing voices and how they change in our 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. That right there, that we had to do the research as three voice teacher pedagogues, that we had to be the researchers, is exactly why it's super important to me to write these books for women, is because we are an underserved population when it comes to medicine and when it comes to voice pedagogy or how voice is taught. Historically, it's really well documented that almost all medical research has been done prior to the 1980s, was done on white men, because that is who was in the medical schools, and that was who the free subjects were that they could run their research tests on, right? So it was the situation. Until later in the 80s and on, it started to be required that research be done on female subjects as well. And now, of course, thankfully, diversity is in the mix too, like, different ideas of different populations having different reactions. Great. But that research hasn't been done yet when it comes to the actual physical changes that happen to our voices when we go through perimenopause and menopause. And the average age of perimenopause in the UK, well, I take this back. The average age of hitting menopause in the UK and in the US is 51 years of age. Right. Perimenopause can start up to 10 years before menopause. Okay, so perimenopause is when the estrogen and progesterone start to fluctuate like a wild roller coaster ride, and
I'm sure a lot
everything.
of our audience can
Yeah,
relate to that. Yeah.
we can relate to that. And
Yeah.
and the way that impacts the voice, I don't need to tell you how it impacts the body, because you probably, and honestly, there's a good chunk of women who don't have any negative impact through perimenopause. And so if you're saying, I don't get it, I don't feel it, that's very possible. But others of us are having extreme dry mouth. We're having night sweats. We're having trouble sleeping at night. We're having swelling sometimes and dehydration other times. Lots of issues with our partners during this time, because sometimes we have emotional things that are attached to perimenopause. It is an incredibly turbulent time for a
Mm,
woman.
mm,
And if you're a person who's going into early menopause, your perimenopause might start in your 30s.
mm.
So this book was super important, not only to let women know there's this thing called perimenopause, and it's going to happen to you, or
Mm,
it happened to you. And maybe if you're beyond this, you're going, oh my gosh, it wasn't me. It wasn't in my head. I wasn't making this up. This actually happened to me. I'd
mm,
prefer that we knew as women in our 30s that this is going to happen. But the thing is, it actually impacts the vocal folds, and it
mm.
impacts how we breathe. And, you know, if you're feeling a little bloated one day and the next day you're not, that means your vocal folds are also a little bloated one day and the next day they're not.
Mm,
And so you might actually not know what instrument you're taking into your show on any
mm.
given day, because during perimenopause we change and it's kind of unpredictable. So this book, it turns out, is about how we cope
Right.
with the inevitable changes that happen to our voices and embrace the positive, embrace the good. So that's why I wrote the book for women, about women, is because I think it's super important that we finally address this thing that impacts 50% of singers at the least. Yeah,
Yes. Yes. So you're saying that our mental and physical health actually can affect our voices directly.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, I I'm learning more about the chakras, and the voice chakra
Okay.
is an important part of the chakra system in many people's belief systems. But whether or not you believe in the energy of the voice chakra, you know that you can hear how a person feels
Hmm.
just at the word hello. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
Yes.
our emotions and our health show up in our voice. Now there's good reason why you might think of this from an anthropological perspective. If we need to decide if someone is sick, if someone is healthy, if someone is worth following or spending time with, or if someone's going to be a problem for us, if we can get that signaling from a person's voice, there's voices that get on our nerves,
Mm.
and there's a good reason why those voices get on our nerves.
Right.
Yeah, so there's good reasoning why a voice quickly signals a lot about a person.
Hmm.
Um, and how it does that through muscle tension. And so our necks are pathetic, weak little things. I mean, to support this all important head on a little stick, what the
Yeah.
heck? and so every little muscle in the throat, including the muscles in the back of the neck,
Mm.
impact how we feel and sound. So you know this already, Carol, but if a person sings with this kind of posture,
Mm.
you can hear and feel that, right?
Yes.
That the resonance changes, and the
Hmm.
minute that you bring that neck and that head back up into a more supported alignment, you can hear more richness in the voice. Now it's up to you as an artist which one you want to use.
Mm.
If you as an artist want a smaller sound and want that forward neck and head alignment resonance, that's fine, that's a choice. But do
But how did you?
realize,
It needs to be a choice, doesn't it?
yeah, it needs to be a choice. Exactly right.
Hmm.
Now, one of our trickiest things as performers is that regardless of what happened to us that day, or that 5 minutes before the show, or how we feel about our guitar player, regardless of that, we have to show up authentically in the song. And by
Hmm.
authentically, I mean that the lyrics of the song demand a specific emotional interpretation, right? And if we do not deliver the right emotional interpretation, well, our audience might be pleasantly surprised if they know the song really well, like, wow, that was a really different version of that. But more often we want to steer it toward the message that we intend to send. And so that's where studying as actors actually plays a big part in controlling. I don't know if I like the word controlling, but having control.
All right.
Yeah.
Right. And so lots of things happen to you while you're aging.
Yes.
And so what would you say are some of the things that the aging process can, what sort of effects can it have on,
yeah. Well, I love that we've already touched on physiological, physical, and emotional. One of the women in our the Singing Through Change book, she was a school teacher who got a vocal injury, and as you know, school teachers have to talk all day, but her vocal folds were damaged, and so the more she talked, the worse her voice got. But she was a singer. And so she had to leave. She sang with a choir, and she had to be silent. She could not leave her choir community. She couldn't bring herself to do that, but she had to mouth the words in order to be part of that community. Well, on top of that, she was getting a divorce at that time, and all that emotional baggage that comes with that. And she had acid reflux. Now, this doesn't seem far-fetched, right? This could be happening a million times on the planet right now. Yeah, this is life. This is life. And all of those things are going to impact her voice. There was another woman, Allison Crockett was our singer of the year last year for the Celebrate Singing. And Allison is sandwiched between her mother who needs care and her two children who needs care, and she is the sole breadwinner for her family, for all four of them. And she is a professor, and she's a singing teacher, and she's a performer. And so, holy cow, what a complicated life. How could fatigue not show up in her voice? And the reason I bring this up around this ages of 40s and 50s is I think that's the most complicated point in our lives. Really. I know it's hard to be a teenager. It's really hard. But being in your 40s and 50s, you're going to be sandwiched and you're going to feel pressure, and that emotional stuff's going to show up in your throat, right?
A Freudian slip there.
Freudian slip there. But also it might show up in how you carry yourself and how tired you might be, whether you got enough sleep. Who knows if that sleep is because of perimenopause or that problem, or if it's because you simply have so much going on and your mind is racing. So those things are all kind of on the periphery of what happens to our throats, right? Yes. What happens to our voices. But if we actually go in deeper and look at the actual layers of the vocal folds, the vocal folds themselves, the cells of the vocal folds are identical for all practical purposes to the cells of the cervix. Okay. So what's going on up here is going on down there. Same thing. So anytime that you may feel like, my privates, my down unders are giving me trouble, your voice might also be giving you trouble because it's the exact same cells. So those cells are going to experience bloating and they're going to experience dehydration. There's also going to be changes to the cartilage around the throat. It becomes more rigid as we get older. And the way that impacts us is that we might not have the riffs that we used to have. We might not have the high notes that we used to have, or the agility or the speed. On the other hand, now the scaffolding that our vocal folds are built on, that scaffolding is strong, and we can really put some pressure on our voices to belt out notes in ways that we could not maybe do when we were younger. So it gives us more strength and power. The vocal folds themselves, the muscles that are inside of them, are changing shape. So as our estrogen decreases, how do you say estrogen in the UK? You don't say
estrogen. Estrogen.
Estrogen. Thank you. As our estrogen
you say estrogen, we say estrogen. Yeah.
So as our estrogen decreases, then the testosterone becomes a more dominant hormone in our bodies, and that means muscle. right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that means the vocal fold muscle might get larger in your throat without you hardly even trying. What
Mm,
does that do? That also slows down the agility, but it increases the richness and the lowness of our voice. So these are changes that we typically hear. When you listen to a 30-year-old woman versus a 60-year-old woman, you're going to notice the difference. And that difference is probably going to be in richness in the older voice and maybe more agility in the lower voice. But the more you use your voice, the more that you stretch it every day. Sing up into your high notes, sing your fast riffs, and don't spend a too much time in your low voice because that's just going to get better. But
mm,
if you can spend that time in your higher voice as you age and make sure you stretch it 10 minutes a day, 10 minutes actually, there was a study done by Rebecca Mosley Morgan in the UK, and she determined that for women in their 60s and 70s, if they did high voice classical British choir warm-ups, high voice, gentle, if they did those 20 minutes 3 times a week, then they maintained a lot of their high voice agility. So that
mm,
was a really valuable study that just came out last year.
mm. Well, as you were talking, it sounded as well like there are actually some benefits to your voice changing as you get older. A lot
Absolutely.
of women out there might be thinking, "Oh, I don't have the same voice I had before, and
Right.
I'm done now. That's it." But from what you just said, it sounds like, all is not lost.
Yeah, I love the way you broke that into two parts just now. I'm going to grab onto those. I don't have the same voice I used to have. I'm done now. I'm just going to quit. No, you don't quit. You don't quit. You take this changed voice, this modified voice, and you make it work because you've got stories now to tell that
Hmm.
you did not have to tell when you were younger. You've
Yeah.
got power in your voice. My favorite example of this is Mavis Staples. Like, holy cow, that woman turned 80. She's 82 now, I think, and she's still putting music out there. And there's so many other amazing women with stories to tell. And I
Hmm.
cannot wait to hear those stories.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what would you say was the biggest takeaway from researching and writing, co-writing this book?
Yeah, that actually is the stories. What we learned in researching Singing Through Change is that the stories that the women had for themselves about the change they were going through made all the difference in the world. So if the woman was telling herself, "This is awful, why me? I can't sing anymore. I can't do this anymore," then that woman lived that story.
Hmm.
But the woman could have chosen a different story, a story that was, "Well, this is different. I think I can do this. Let's find out what's in there." One of the women in our book was a classical singer and a soprano, and she suddenly discovered, oh, she took a 10-year break because she freaked out about her voice. Like, I can't sing anymore, I'm going to stop. But she was encouraged to start singing again by her daughter. And it was like a new voice to her. And she said, I can do torch songs now, which, romantic, sexy ballads. I can
Mm.
do those
Hmm.
now when I could never have imagined doing those before. So she found an incredible gift on the other side that she could be sultry and sexy with her voice when before she was more like a butterfly. So having those stories be positive, we really saw that when we were tracking through the research. Other positive stories that women told was about their physical health. Women who decided that they were going to be as healthy as possible through their 40s and 50s, through all those challenges, they were more healthy.
Mm.
And there are other studies that have come out now. Oh, shoot, I can't remember the researcher's name. They did a study on women who clean hotel rooms. And they had two groups of women. One they told nothing.
Hmm.
This was the neutral group. They said nothing. To the other group, they said, do you realize that when you're pushing that cart around and making those beds and walking those 20,000 steps a day, you're actually getting all the exercise you need? Well, before they told them that, they took their blood pressure and their weight and their body fat and all that stuff. And then they told them that you are getting enough exercise. And they came back 6 weeks later and they found that those women had decreased blood pressure and overall increased health just with the knowledge that they were actually working really well with their bodies. And so that goes to show you that the story that you tell yourself can actually impact you physically and make you a healthier, stronger, happier person. So
Mm,
that was the big message I took away, is that our stories are so much of who we are, and we can shape and mold those stories to work for us.
mm, mm. Well, that's a powerful, powerful message. Um, is there anything else you'd like to say to our audience out there of women who may be feeling like, oh, yeah, it's all over now?
Yeah. Well, if you're truly in that spot of it's all over now, I would warn you that it's one step at a time, but also tell you that it is so worth it to take that one step at a time toward a stronger, healthier voice and a stronger, healthier story about yourself. So that might just be, the story might be one positive affirmation 3 times a day.
Mm,
If you can do that, you'll start to change your story about yourself. For your voice, it might be 5 minutes of singing along with the radio 3 times a day. But sure enough, your optimal voice, which might be changed, it might be different. It might mean you have to learn new songs or new parts,
mm,
but that's also exciting. What an opportunity that is. Do not stop singing. It is so much a part of us to sing. Keep
mhm.
singing.
Yeah,
Do not stop singing because the world needs to hear your message. It's important. Keep going, keep being part of this community.
fantastic. And from the book as well, you know, I realized that there's just so many different types of stories, so many different. I mean, you know, each story in the book was completely different to each other. So there's a different story for every woman out there.
Yeah, there sure is. And that brings up the point that I I don't feel like we can prescribe this is what you need to do in order to accomplish
Mm,
this.
mm,
Because the going back to the example of the school teacher who lost her voice and was going through a divorce
mm,
and had acid reflux.
mm,
Well, okay. If she solves the emotional issues of the divorce, will the acid reflux go away? It might, because stress can cause acid reflux.
yeah.
What impact will that have on the voice? But
Mm,
somebody else may not have that exact same package, and high blood pressure might be a part of it, or diet, salt and sugar really
mm,
mess with our voices. And I should say that that's not fair to just drop that bomb and not explain it a little bit better. If
mm,
we eat a lot of salt, we have general inflammation throughout our whole body. Same thing goes with sugar. If we eat a lot of sugar, we have general inflammation throughout our whole body,
mm,
and that impacts our throats. And so, all things in moderation, and perhaps with sugar, maybe no moderation, maybe just none, if
mhm.
you want to optimize your voice.
Yeah.
And so that's why I say that those factors, a person's diet, their exercise, their sleep, how many people live in the same household, how dry is their environment, how late in the day do they eat? Do they eat after a gig? That can
Mm,
impact the voice for the next day. So,
mm,
so many different factors I can't prescribe and say, this is what you need to do. The one thing I can prescribe is you need to be conscious of what your choices are and
mm.
make sure that they're working for you the best.
Yes, because I was just thinking there might be women out there thinking, well, I know my voice is not the way I want it to be, but if there's so many different elements that can affect it, how, where do I start? How do I actually
Wow.
start to
Yeah.
address it?
Yeah, that can be really overwhelming. And I think this conference is great, or these videos that you're doing is a great place to start. I love it that you're teaching people this way. Of course, I'd love for women to read Singing Through Change, because there's examples of over 50 different stories in there, and you can, take and pick, oh, this is me and this isn't me.
Hmm.
Um, and also, there's one woman in the book who has cancer, and she was dealing with the cancer medications. I am happy to say that in most cases, um, chemotherapy may throw you temporarily into menopause if you're younger,
Mm,
but it's likely that you'll come back out of it, but still worth knowing.
mm,
So, where do women start? I think I would personally start with diet. I would start with looking at maybe not eating anything a couple hours before bed, making sure that you're drinking as much water as is recommended where you live. I say that because I used to live in a very, very humid place, and
mm.
I didn't need to drink as much water as I do now. I live in the desert.
Right.
So I like had to double my water intake. So cheers.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Right.
Yeah, and of course you can start with your doctor and you can look at hormone replacement therapy. I don't want to necessarily push hormone replacement therapy, but yeah, I kind of do because it's actually awesome. It's awesome what we can do now with modern medicine to help balance out these changes and make them far less dramatic.
Mm,
So that would be working with a doctor on that one.
okay. Well, I hope this has given women out there some hope, at least, that there are options, and that, all is not lost, and that there are places they can go to get some help. And also too, it's helpful to be more conscious of yourself and what's happening and when and what might be affecting your voice at different times.
Yeah, I not only all is not lost, but there are so many gains to be had.
Mm,
And so yeah, it's change, and change is hard. It's like, really, do I have to start over again with new songs, or
mm.
do I have to learn my voice all over again? But oh, how exciting. I just love the idea.
I think this is the era of change now anyway. Nothing
That's
ever really
right.
stays the same. So you got just roll with it.
Yeah. Getting sick of that, actually. Yes.
So is there anything that you would like to address that you feel we haven't quite covered up till this point, or?
The only thing I'd like to address is to circle back to how important it is as women for us to take the mic, claim it. Don't let anybody tell us that the mic doesn't belong to us. It is ours to take. And yeah, get out there and sing.
Amen. Amen. So if people want to find out more about you and what you're up to, where's the best place to go?
Thank you. My publishing website where the books are is studioboss.com. That's STUDIOBOS.com. My personal website is nancyboss.me, nancyboss.me. And my only social media really is LinkedIn, because I'm just not a fan of the social medias in general, but happy to have people reach out to me.
Okay, that's good to hear. And last but not least, I understand that you have a free gift for our listeners and viewers out there.
Absolutely. I'm assuming you'll provide them a link. So
Yes.
let me just
Yes,
tell
I'll
them.
put the links for everything actually in here. Yeah.
Fabulous. So what I've got is I've worked with actually a British musician to make backing tracks for vocal warm-ups. And these vocal warm-ups are meant to build strength and stamina. Getting through the whole series, you'll have them available on a web page, and getting through the whole series might be too challenging. It might be you just want to start at the beginning and see how far you get. If your voice becomes hoarse or raspy while you're doing them, stop and come back at another time.
Mm.
But they are tools for you to use with fun rock backing tracks to really use your voice every day and optimize what you've got.
That sounds amazing. And I like the word fun. I
Yeah.
think a lot of us have the fun has gone out of singing because we're
Mhm.
worried about it, we're stressed out about it. And so I think a big part of it is to just bring the fun back into singing.
100%. And
And
fun is how play is how we discover. And so play, play, play. Yeah.
yes. Well, thank you very much, Nancy, for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Honored to be here. So glad to talk to all of you.
Thank you. And I'll see you on the next video.